Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about the new movie, Out of Darkness. Out of Darkness actually came out in 2022, but it just became available and released in theaters here in America. I do love a good creature horror movie, so I wanted to check this one out. The synopsis is as follows. About 45,000 years ago, a desperate band of early humans finds a new land to settle in. As they start to realize that something monstrous is hunting them down, they must confront a horrifying danger that they never could have imagined. So without further ado, let's get into the 6 things that make a movie great. 1. The plot. The plot and storytelling of this movie was pretty captivating, for the most part. This movie opens with this group of people around a campfire, and through creative storytelling shares why they're there and what they're doing. They've come to this new land to survive and thrive and start a new colony. But the land is a lot less fruitful and forgiving than they thought it was going to be. So they continue traveling, going towards a mountain, trying to find shelter and food. But shortly after they begin, they realize that they're being hunted. I split this movie into 3 acts. The first act has to do with kind of getting to know each of the characters to a certain regard. Act 2 has to do with trying to figure out what this creature is as they begin hunting it down. And Act 3 is the realization of what this creature is and what they end up doing about it. Act 1 was by far the best. It was very captivating, it had you on the edge of your seat, and the mystery and horror of what was going on was still a very big part of the movie. Act 2 started to get pretty boring. I feel like you have to reach a point where you have to show the audience kind of more of what's going on to draw them in further and have it still be scary. And really it was just this bland in-between where nothing new really happened and just kind of started to get long-winded. And then there was Act 3, which was by far the worst of them all. Act 3 had a very disappointing reveal, a very big twist that was very, very terrible, and ultimately it ruined the movie. There was a lot of good things going for this movie, and then it fell apart, and it's really sad. So for the parts that were good, for me, plot gets a 50-50. 2 is family friendliness. Out of Darkness is rated R. There's a mild to moderate bit of action, there's 1 F-bomb, there's some moments of graphic violence and blood and gore, a scene of sexual assault, and some other pretty disturbing elements that I won't go into because they're technically spoilers. While objectively there's quite a few different things in this movie, there just wasn't a ton of those things, so it honestly was pretty tame for an R-rated movie, but still belongs in that category. So for me, family friendliness gets a thumbs down. 3 is acting and script. First and foremost, this whole movie is subbed in English. The language that's spoken is actually a made-up language called Tola. So the fact that they created a language for this movie is pretty cool. And the acting in this movie, for the most part, was pretty decent. For me, by far, the stand-up performance came from Sophia Oakley-Green. There were multiple scenes where she just killed it. One scene in particular where she's having to express fear while fronting bravery, the facial changes and emotions that are so obvious in her acting performance are so well done. Like some of the best acting that I've seen in a while. That was really impressive, and for most of the film, her performance is much of the same. The rest of the acting performances were decent, but not nearly as good as hers. And the script of this movie was pretty well done. This wasn't a very dialogue-heavy movie, so it felt like every line had purpose. If I remember correctly, there was only one kind of cringy line, but other than that, I thought that the acting and script of this movie was pretty well done. So for me, acting and script get a thumbs up. 4 is character development. Unfortunately, there wasn't a ton of character development in this movie. You don't really know much about any of these characters. Bea had an okay arc. There wasn't much character development, it was just her cycling from the outcast to the main character, and so it felt better than it actually was. They do mention some small details about why they're no longer with their tribe, but you don't really have the why. And the shallowness of their characters started to show through. So for me, character development gets 50-50. 5 is visuals and CGI. One of the greatest strengths of this movie were its visuals. The film I found myself comparing this one to was The Northman. The visuals in this movie were very gritty, very real, and a lot of the camera angles and pans that they did were excellent. There were also some very beautiful landscape shots and some very unique use of weather and elements and sound that contributed some very awesome things to this film. For me, there were no issues in this category, and it was the strongest of the movie. So for me, visuals and CGI get a thumbs up. And 6 is rewatchability. Out of Darkness clocks in at just below an hour and a half. And that surprised me a lot. I went into the movie knowing that it was this short, but because of the way they told the story, it felt like a 2-hour film, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. until you get to the end. The pacing issues that this movie experienced in Act 2 kind of pushed the time out a little bit, and the really dumb twist at the end defined the whole movie and honestly threw it in the trash. I have no idea why the director would decide to tank this movie like that, because there was a lot of potential in this film. And because of that, for me, rewatchability gets a thumbs down. With all these areas considered, I have to give Out of Darkness a 4 out of 10. This movie had exceptional visuals and camera work, an excellent acting performance by Sophia Oakley, and a pretty decent premise for what could have been a great creature horror film. But this movie struggled with pacing issues, characters that became shallowed out, and a really random twist at the end that didn't belong anywhere near this movie and ultimately tanked it. So with that being said, unfortunately, I would not recommend going to see Out of Darkness in theaters, but you might consider watching it on a streaming platform for free. Thank you so much for watching. If you've seen Out of Darkness, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. As always, I appreciate your love and support, and I'll catch you guys and gals in the next one.